All right, welcome to fish lesson number 4. We are going to start with number 5 on your study guide. So if you want to split screen this and open your study guide to help you, I think this will be greatly beneficial. We're starting bony fish, which is in class Osteichthyes. And there's 2 major categories of all bony fish. We have our ray fin fish and we have our lobe fin fish. When we look at the lobe fin fish, we've talked about them previously, with them being the precursor or ancestor of amphibians, tetrapods. So ray fin fish are the fish that you are probably more familiar with. So when we look at the ray fin fish, we know that they're going to have certain types of fins that are built differently than the lobe fin fish. And we're going to go over examples of those. Okay, so when we're looking at our bony fish, I already mentioned the 2 examples, and we'll talk more in depth about those coming up. We know that the bony fish are going to have structures that the cartilage is replaced by bone. It's called endochondral bone replaces cartilage, all right, during development. In fact, when we look at even development of all of our vertebrates, such as us, that have bones, even the ends of the bones during growth are still covered with cartilage. Not only is it good for the joints, for movement, but that area is the growth region. When people talk about the growth plate, that's what's still growing. If you still have cartilage there, the bone is still growing. Cartilage is replaced by bone as embryos grow and develop. And they also have something different that the sharks and the other cartilaginous fish don't have. They have either lungs, yes, I did say lungs in some species, or they have a swim bladder that's going to be a pouchment of the gut that enables them to regulate buoyancy, and it does give some respiratory benefit to certain species of fish. So when we look at the swim bladder, it's a gas-filled structure. It's kind of a pouch off the esophagus, and it's going to regulate the depth in those fish. In the fish that do use those pouches, you could say, for respiration, we're going to call them lungs. So you can definitely see how fish could have made the jump to tetrapods and living on land because they already had this built-in lung-like structure that could be used in a terrestrial ecosystem. So let's go on from here. Will let me go on. There we go. Here's a nice example of a ray fin bony fish. Notice these fins right here kind of look like the rays, whether we're talking sunshine. The structures that support those fins come out from this origin. There's a difference in the lobe fin fish, but we're going to talk about the majority of these structures, so you can refer back to this diagram as needed in your notes. All right, so let's take a look at scales. When we look at what's over the body of fish, obviously they have scales. We talked about placoid scales in our sharks. We're going to have what we call cycloid and ctenoid scales in many of our bony fish. And when we look at our ancient fish, they would have had heavier protective scales to keep them from being eaten when they were in the water with big, mean prehistoric creatures that used to live there. Now, some of our fish do not have scales anymore. The eels, catfish, and a few other different species don't have the scales. The hagfish and the lampreys are absent in scales, but they're not considered bony fish. Fins are going to give them a lot of mobility when we look at the ray fins in these fish. And then, of course, they do have that jaw, which allowed them to eat a lot of different kinds of food that the cartilaginous fish can always do. They have a jaw as well. So let's take a look at specific structures with our fins. Number 6, you're supposed to draw a bony fish and label the fins. So take a look at your study guide. How are you going to do this? You can take a picture and then maybe insert it into the study guide, like sketch it on a piece of paper and send it to me. Either way, you need a diagram here that helps you learn the different fins and their names. So when we look at our fins, we have our pectoral fin. Think of this in the chest region of the fish. We have our pelvic fins, which are lower down. Anal fins are down by the anus. And then we have our dorsal fins, which are on the dorsal side of the fish. And then the caudal fin. And looking at specifically what they do, the caudal fin is for propulsion. Dorsal fin is for balance. Anal fin also for balance. These 2 fins are paired, meaning there's one on this side and one on the opposite side for both of these. There's one here and one on the opposite side. So they can move and allow for steering. And then the operculum is to cover the gills. You don't want the gills open. And when we get to respiration, we'll talk about the role the operculum plays in respiration. Okay, so here are the gills. We've talked about the gills briefly at the very beginning of the chapter. The operculum is cut away here so you can see into the gills. You can see the filaments and the lamellae. So the water will come in through the mouth and then move out through the gills as the operculum opens and closes. So that movement of the operculum is going to cause water to flow across the gills for respiration. Different shapes of tails depending on what the fish is doing. Bass fish are going to have a different shaped tail than, say, just slower moving fish. Nice comparison. And here's a comparison with some of our different types of scales. And you can see the rings here with the scales. They do have a slime coating over the top of the scales to help protect them from infection, whether we're talking fungal infections or bacterial infections. If you remove their slime coating or they've been injured and the slime coating has been worn away, it can cause infection in the fish. And you can determine the age of the fish by the rings, kind of like a tree. During the season, as the fish grows, the scales grow right along with them. Small fish have small scales. Bigger fish tend to have larger scales, depending on the species. But you can see our various types of scales here, and they all do have those rings on them. This is the origin of the scale. It's coming out of the skin, very much like a scale of a reptile, the feather of a bird, or the hair on a mammal. Okay, so let's go back to our classification that we touched on already. Ray fin and lobe fin. Really common ones you're going to find around here that are ray fin are going to be your bass, your bluegill. In the ocean, you're going to see marlins, tuna, and salmon. And then the lungfish and coelacanth are going to be primarily the lobefin fish. Here's our lobefin fish. Here's our coelacanth right here. It's found usually off the coast of Africa and Madagascar for many years. They thought this species was extinct, but it was found in fish markets recently. And you can see that there's these appendage type structures, kind of like the Tiktaalik had these coming off. It makes it very movable. I've got a couple of video links I'm going to put on Google Classroom for you to take a look at too. And here's our lungfish. The fins are not quite the same as a coelacanth, but it does allow them to move on land somewhat. Here's our coelacanth again. It shows you where it is found in the world, also around the area here, around Indonesia and the Philippines. And we did think it was extinct for quite a while, but it is not. Most likely this species was in the water when dinosaurs walked the earth. And our lungfish, you can find them in Australia and South America and Africa. If you go to the Shedd Aquarium, they have all three, or at least they used to, have all three species of lungfish there. Also some great videos that I'll link on Google Classroom for you to take a look at lungfish. Notice they don't have large fins like the coelacanth. In fact, these fins don't do a whole lot for them. They more or less slither when they get onto the land. And this one's built a little bit different, being in Australia. Probably a type of convergent evolution. Probably had a distant ancestor. Very distant. Okay, here's some ray fin fish. We have I think it's called a bakar. We have the sturgeon, which is found not only on the Atlantic side, but we can find it in some of our streams. The Missouri River has a type of sturgeon, not an Atlantic, but a sturgeon. And then the paddlefish is found in our rivers in the Midwest. You can catch them at the lower part of the Alton Dam during snagging season. Here's some more ray fin fish. You can see our bass, white-mouthed bass. Here's a gar that we do have in the river as well. And then here's a trout that many people like to fish. Go to some of the streams in Missouri and they have hatcheries and you can pay to catch trout. Here's a bluegill, which we find in our ponds. You go to Lewis and Clark and you fish, you're going to find these. Glazebrook Park, you'll find these. These are walleyes. They're more of a deep water fish that taste really good. And of course, this is a smaller catfish, but we find those all over. People stock them. And then you have this freshwater eel, which is not like a moray eel that you see in the ocean. It's a completely different species. Here's a swordfish. found in the ocean only. They're considered a sporting fish, and they do lash with their sword to take out any type of fish for food. Here's a mud skipper, kind of like a tetrapod. They have a burrow where they put their eggs. Here's a remora, which has a commensalistic relationship with sharks. This sucker head is not parasitic. It allows it to hang out and travel with sharks for protection and to get scraps of food from the shark. And then this is an invasive species. This is the lionfish, also ray-finned. They've been introduced into waterways, especially in the Caribbean, around the islands around Florida, and they have times when people go out and they use spearfishing to kill as many of them as they can. They're highly toxic, and they've taken over many reef areas. Okay, so how do fish move? When we look at their movement, they grow. They always grow, and normally the bigger the fish, the larger the fish, the faster they're going to be. In fact, fish never stop growing. Their entire life, they will grow and reproduce as long as they are healthy. So how do they move? Well, they have these special muscles called myomeres. And they look like this. And this is the part that we like to eat, whether we're talking salmon or trout or tuna. This is the muscle on the fish. This is the portion that we eat. This is a portion that they eat. And it gives them the ability to move pretty quickly, especially in a streamlined fish that's shaped like this. And this just shows you how they go about moving, whether they're a fish or an eel. They kind of undulate back and forth. This one's a really fast fish. This is our tuna. You can see this caudal fin is sickle-shaped. Those are fast-moving fish. All right, swim bladder. We talked a little bit about that already. We know that it allows for depth regulation, that it moves the air in and out of the bloodstream to expand the swim bladder so that it can go up and down in the water. And we're talking really quickly. This does not happen slowly. Fish can move up and down in the water quite fast. And if they do get a disease that affects the swim bladder, then they're going to be kind of floating funny. They don't act normally when the swim bladder is affected. It's located right along here. If you've ever gutted a fish or dissected a fish, swim bladder, notice it's hooked into the circulatory system to regulate the gas flow in and out of that bladder. It's like a balloon that when it plumps up, then it's going to rise in the water, and when it deflates, it's going to sink a little bit more. But it's kind of shiny. If you've ever cut into it, it's right up above the kidneys, and it's very shiny. Usually you've already popped a hole in it, so there's no more air in it. When we look at how fish detect their food, not all fish are carnivores, but the majority are. They're going to eat dead things. They're going to hunt. They're going to eat insects. And they have very good color vision. They can smell. They can actually pick up vibrations with things called Weberian ossicles. Not all of them have this, but these are little stones that hook into the skull and transmit sound right into the brain. So they have good vision, they have good smelling, they have good vibration detection along with the lateral line system. This is what the Weberian ossicles look like right here. Notice it's channeled into the brain, so sound is picked up through the body, goes into the Weberian ossicles and moves to the brain so the fish can pick up information from their surroundings. So when you talk too loud while you're fishing, you're probably not going to catch too many fish. All right, lateral line system we've talked about previously helps them pick up information from their surroundings, vibrations in the water, changes in water pressure when something's swimming next to them. And here is your lateral line on this fish. And we know it's three-dimensional. It goes down. These little holes that you saw, that line running across there, just are these little holes, and the water goes down into those little holes. So it's kind of like a canal that stimulates those sense hairs to tell the fish that something's near, something's going on. Respiration we've talked about already. We know that there's water flowing through the operculum over the gills to keep them breathing. When we look at some fish that can live out of water, this is a list of some of those that can spend some time out of water. Lungfish, eels. Eels have been known to get up on land and feed. Loch Ness Monster was really an eel, and I think I'm out of time. I'm going to make a second part to this.